Alrighty, hey everybody, welcome. Hopefully you guys have had a good week so far. I realize we're at Wednesday, so it's the middle of the week, so we're officially halfway done. Um, so that is good. As far as today's episode, we're going to be talking about mindset and why is it important, and can you actually change it? Um, First off, we're going to start off with a couple quotes here, and then we'll recap with those at the end. Um, First one is from Buddha, and it says that the mind is everything. What you think, you become. Next one is whether you think you can or you can't, you're probably right. And that one's from Henry Ford. The third one is from Muhammad Ali, and that is, if my mind can conceive it and my heart can believe it, then I can achieve it. And then the last one is from Tony Robbins. This is that nothing in life has meaning except the meaning that I give it. And all of these are vital to what we're talking about today as far as mindset. If you do know, our brain has about 70,000 thoughts a day. And many times these are negative thoughts. And how this impacts our well-being is huge. A study from the Kaiser Family Foundation, a recent study, found that about 45% of U.S. adults have reported negative mental health consequences since the start of the pandemic. So obviously not surprising there. And it wasn't necessarily that they're depressed, it's just that their emotional well-being is, there's less of energy, less fulfillment, less enjoyment of life in general. And this is part of the issue that we're seeing with the pandemic, but also even before the pandemic, as far as how much mindset plays a role in how we perceive things in life. Cognitive therapists have long known that we simply don't respond to events in life, but to our interpretation of those events. It's basically, our mindset is vital to how we process and reprocess the events that we go through. So this comes down to what exactly is mindset. It's a set of beliefs as far as how you make sense of the world around you and yourself. It influences how we think, feel, and behave in any given situation. And basically, our mindset is fundamental to our being. It's more important than our inherited ability to learn, and it has huge impacts on things like our relationships and our career. It's pretty much divided into two main types of mindset. You have the fixed type, and then you have the growth type. If you have a fixed mindset, you basically believe that your abilities are set traits and they cannot be changed. You might also believe that your talent and intelligence alone lead to success. Essentially, you don't need to put in any work or any effort in order to do well. And while this belief isn't entirely irrational, the problem arises when you generally, this belief basically it has it where you don't put any extra hard work, effort, whatever you want to call it, into a task. Even, obviously, especially the hard ones. So this means people with fixed mindsets are more likely to give up when they're faced with a challenge. They're also constantly seeking validation from not only others, but from themselves, and to prove their worth, essentially. And for instance, a lot of people with fixed mindsets are afraid of making mistakes because they become defensive. When it comes to relationships, they often view them as an all or nothing. And so they either ignore problems or they give up on a relationship at the first sign of trouble. Those with a growth mindset believe that a person's talents and abilities can be developed over time through effort and persistence. This is also known as an opportunity mindset. Essentially, these people believe that people can get smarter and more talented if they work at it. So by working at it, the efforts promise reward and failures provide opportunity to learn. and develop yourself. So these folks often find new ways to engage in certain activities. They discover new activities, and they channel recent experiences in a more positive manner. This obviously bodes well for relationships because you essentially believe people can change. The key here is the individual has to want to change. You can't force someone to change. And obviously you can go too far at the other end of the spectrum where people stay in unhealthy, abusive type relationships because they believe the person can change when that most likely isn't the case because the person doesn't want to change. So when it comes to your mindset, how do you know what type do you have? And this is where you have to ask yourself a few different things. And I'm going to read off these statements, and then we'll cover over which ones equal fixed mindset and which one equals growth mindset. So, first statement, you're born with a certain amount of intelligence, and it isn't something that can be changed. Second statement, no matter who you are, there isn't much you can do to improve your basic abilities and personality. Third statement, people are capable of changing who they are. Fourth, you can learn new things and improve your intelligence. Fifth statement, people either have particular talents or they don't. You can't just acquire talent for things like music, writing, art, or athletics. And the sixth and final statement, studying, working hard, and practicing new skills are all ways to develop new talents and abilities. Real quick, take a moment, tally up which ones most describe you, and then we'll go over here as far as what ones equal fixed mindset, which ones equal growth mindset. I'm going to pause for just a second. Okay, now that you've gone through that, if you tend to agree with most statements, 1, 2, and 5, then you probably have a more fixed mindset. If you agree more with statements 3, 4, and 6, then you most likely have a growth mindset. By this point, you're probably wondering, okay, great, now I know what type of mindset do I have. Well, how did I get it? How did it become created within me? Well, the renowned psychologist Carol Dweck has done probably 30 plus years of research on this material. And she did find that basically our mindset comes back to how we were interacted with as a child. There's two primary types of sources that it comes from. It's the type of praise that we receive or labeling that we receive as a child. So if given personal praise, and an example of this is praising a child based off their talents, telling them that they're smart, this often leads to a more fixed mindset because it sends the message that either you have the ability or you don't. There's nothing that you can do about it. So essentially, these children, as they become adults, learn that each task is a challenge to their own self-image. So that they will only pursue activities that they're sure to do well in. And then they try to avoid things that have an unknown outcome that they could potentially do bad in. So this means that they're willing to want to look smart, essentially, or look good, or whatever the adjective is you want to use, if without having to go through essentially the learning process. They just, because otherwise they take it as a personal threat. So this is the personal praise. Now we're going to talk about process praise. Process praise is where you emphasize the effort that they put into accomplishing a task. And basically implies that success is due to effort and strategy that was used, not just innate ability. Both effort and strategy are things that we can control and improve over time. This type of praise, the process praise, is what fosters a growth mindset. Um, this means kids don't worry about taking risks. They don't worry about failure because they feel that each mistake is a chance to learn. And so this approach actually creates a passion for learning and makes the individual more likely to have what it takes to succeed, essentially that grit, the drive to keep persisting and working hard and going through that effort. Um, and obviously, adults have a huge impact on how children, what praise they give their child. Uh, so the key thing for adults to remember is when you're praising your child, praise their efforts, praise the strategy they used, and don't focus on just their talent or such. By doing that, they learn that hard work, dedication, persistence can lead to change, learning, and growth, which is beneficial to them not only in the present, but also in the future as adults. Um, uh, so if they, for instance, they have a problem, they mess up, instead of um, blaming or making excuses, um, give them feedback that helps them understand how to fix the problem, like where they went wrong in their strategy, or maybe, as far as the level of effort, maybe they didn't put in as much as they could have. Um, helps them expand their knowledge and skills. Um, but it's also important to praise your child for their inherent goodness. They need to know that they're basically good and that their parents love them unconditionally. It's not conditional based off of um, particular ways to please their parents, certain talents they have, certain skills they have. So it's important to walk that fine line between obviously praising who they are as a human being and an individual, and then when they're working on something, praising that effort and the strategy that they've used, or help them correct it if needed. So it's also not uncommon as adults and kids, anyone, to have negative thoughts on occasion. I mean, this is normal. This is part of our internal monologue that we listen to. Um, so while we have the tendency to dwell on certain thoughts, especially negative thoughts, the problem is when you repeatedly focus on them over and over and over again. And this causes you to forget the positives in a situation. Um, Another bad habit that many of us have is making more out of a situation than it needs to be. We're essentially making a mountain out of a molehill. We also tend to assume that we know how something will turn out before it happens, and therefore we take action based on those assumptions. The issue with this is sometimes it doesn't happen that way. In fact, a good portion of the time it doesn't happen that way. And then we also personalize everything. We think that everything that's happening around us is because of us. And obviously that's not reality. Everybody's doing their own thing, and what happens around us, sometimes, yeah, is directly a result of our input or output, but a good portion of the time, we don't have any actual direct control over everything around us. And then we often have very limiting beliefs, such as the stories we tell ourselves about who we really are. A lot of time, these are negative things. I'm not good, I'm overweight, I'm whatever. And that's where, typically these aren't true. So if you believe that, that sets you in this whole negative mindset, that whole negative loop cycle again. And then a lot of things that people deal with is we look at things from a place of fear. We fear an outcome, so we avoid doing something. We fear failing, so we don't take a risk. And this here is also feeds into that fixed mindset. Good news is you can change your mindset. Neuroplasticity is the term for the brain's ability to form or recognize new nerve synapses, the connection, and how its ability to adapt to our environment and experiences in our lives. So you can do this regardless of age or your circumstance in life. You can always learn and grow. There's no limit on this. Basically, the more you do it, the easier it becomes. So now the question is, how do you do that? How do you change your mindset? when it's something that is so ingrained from our childhood. And the first step is identifying. Identify what your limiting beliefs are. It can be helpful to write them down, keep track, provide detail, give examples from your past that justified your actions. The key thing in this part of the process is being honest with yourself. You need to hold that mirror up and actually look at it. And then once you get this part down, now you're going to examine those beliefs through the lens from a growth mindset. How might you change them? Write this out as a goal for each one. And then you have to take action, though. And this is the hardest step because we like our patterns, we like our habits. It's very easy to fall back into that. And so it's going to take consistent practice. It's key to remind yourself that your ability, your mindset is under your control. You're under complete control of how you think about things. To help with this process, it can be a good idea to ask yourself 3 questions every morning. One is, what are the opportunities for learning and growth today? When, where, and how will you embark on your plan? And when, where, and how will you act on your plan? By asking yourself these things first thing in the morning, when you get up, it helps set you in the right frame of mind from the get-go. Don't be alarmed, though, because throughout the day, you will need to pay attention to your words and thoughts. It's incredibly easy to slip back into our old habits, and you need to replace any negative thoughts with more positive thoughts. Another helpful tip is incorporating the word yet into your vocabulary. If you're struggling with a task, with something in particular, remind yourself that you haven't mastered it yet. And this is key because it signals that despite struggling, you will overcome it. And it's just getting it into your head that, yeah, I can't do it yet, but I will. And it's okay to need to correct yourself multiple times throughout the day. Remember, setbacks are normal. It's just that you need to bounce back by reminding yourself that why you want to change. What is it that's driving you to change? And don't avoid challenges. Embrace them. Remember, making mistakes is one of the best ways to learn. And a wise person once told me, make your mistakes as quick as possible because this means you learn from them and can move on and do get to that better spot. Also, it's important to see the value in the journey. If you're fixated on the result, then you're going to miss out on all the opportunities for learning along the way. And another key thing is to surround yourself with people whose mindsets reflect where you want to be. This is crucial because if you're in a group of like-minded individuals, they're only going to draw you back into that negative cycle. Once you've done all of these things, it's important to consider where you were, where you are now, and what skills that you're going to need to get to your ultimate goal. Essentially, look at the big picture. You've got to look at it, basically take the eagle eye view, look down. Where is it that you want to be? And once you get that, that helps guide you down a path of as far as what you need to do to reach that. It also helps you realize that anything worth doing is worth doing poorly at first. But with time and practice, your new ways of thinking will help to lead to growth. A great way to jumpstart your mindset change is working with a professional coach. It's incredibly effective because you're partnering with a person who's already walked the path that you want to go down and knows the best strategies to help execute that. And this can help you learn those and get you basically on the fast track to getting to the right mindset that you want. So to sum it up, our beliefs create our world, but let me pause. Our beliefs create our world, but we are in control of our beliefs. Okay? They are in charge of our emotions, mindset, and lives. Unfortunately, many people don't try to change their lives until they're in a desperate situation, and that's why they fail. It's not because that they're wrong, they can't figure it out, it's that they're in the wrong frame of mind. They're not ready. You have to be willing and ready to make the change before you're in a desperate situation. Essentially, unless we change the way we think about a situation, you can't change the situation. So the key to self-improvement in this is finding what works for you and sticking with it. So this is going to take some experimentation. And that way, once you figure that out, stick with it. Don't give up. It will happen. It will change. Remember, reality isn't what shapes our experience. Our mindset shapes our experience. It's how we think about reality that is the key. All right, well, that sums it up for today's episode. I'm glad you guys could join me today. If you have questions, comments, hit me up in the comments, send me a message. I'd love to hear from you. If you have a specific topic you want to talk about, it's great. Let's talk about it. And then otherwise, I will see you guys next week in our next live training event. Until then, though, stay healthy.